Welcome to your homecoming pregame special with your hosts Charlie Maurer, Garrett Drake, Jace Dery, and Griffin Hadley.
The Carmel Greyhounds are 27-3 all-time for their homecoming matchup and are looking to have similar success tonight against their MIC rival, the North Central Panthers. Good evening and welcome to a special presentation of your Carmel Greyhounds football pregame show. I'm your host, Charlie Maurer, alongside me my usual co-host, Jace Dery, and we're pleased to welcome two members of Carmel High School Television, Garrett Drake and Griffin Hadley. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the sideline for what looked to be a great matchup.
Thanks, Charlie. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's going to be a great game, guys. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited for this matchup, but let's take a step back and look at last week's matchup for the Carmel Greyhounds. Lawrence North at home, one of the toughest games the Greyhounds have faced all year. 23-20 the final score in overtime. Garrett, what were some thoughts on the game last week for the Greyhounds?
Well, Carmel was really fortunate to get out of there with a W, and it took just about all of their effort from the defense. You know, the defense had to do everything they could to keep the offense in the game. They were actually trailing in overtime. They needed a touchdown, and fortunately for the Greyhounds, they got it on a Zach Osborne QB sneak.
Griffin?
You know, I think that the Greyhounds really underestimated that Lawrence North team. I think going into the game, they were extra confident after coming off of 2 wins, and I think that going into the game, they were like, oh, this is going to be an easy win. But as the game went on, I think they, when they started missing opportunities, they were like, oh, shoot. And I think that Greyhound secondary is going to need to be a lot sharper tonight if they want to get the win.
And, Jace, you're on the call last week. What did you see out of the Greyhounds?
You know, it was definitely a sloppy game from first start. I think the play calling in the first half wasn't what Coach Aaron Hahn really expected, but I think as the second half went on, they had a little spark in them and wanted to and realized that they had to win this game. Like you talked about, they have to have a better start tonight and really come out firing, especially in front of the homecoming crowd.
Again, the Greyhounds defeated the Lawrence North Wildcats last week, 23-20 in overtime, now moving their record to 4-1 on the season, 3-0 in the MIC. And let's take a look at the stats last week for the Greyhounds offense. Sophomore quarterback Zach Osborne starts the game, 8 for 16, 113 yards passing, an interception and a rushing touchdown. And Griffin, we've said all year, Zach Osborne not being a very good pocket passer. Do you think he has more success tonight against the North Central defense?
I think that he will have more success just because he had that experience in that LN game last week. I think it will still be a learning experience, however, because I think coming off of his freshman year, he's only a sophomore, and last year he was able to pass the ball because those freshman defenses really weren't a factor in those games. But this year he's playing against the big varsity boys, and I think only attempting 16 passes shows that he's a very inexperienced pocket passer, and I think that he's going to have to mature a little bit and really hit those wide receiver routes to help this offense stay alive in this game.
I will say this, though, Charlie. As the season has progressed, he has definitely become a lot more confident in the pocket. You're seeing his stats. Although he hasn't really thrown a passing touchdown yet, he's becoming a lot more confident. He's able to throw these tough balls in a double coverage, like we saw last week. That corner route to Zach Dilgert was a key aspect in that part of the game. But either way, although the stats might not show it, he's definitely getting that confidence more, especially into the back half of the season.
And Garrett, thoughts on Zach Osborne?
I think Osborne, we could expect a good game out of him today, but one thing I would like to see from the play caller, Coach Aaron Hahn, tonight, Jace was talking about it earlier, is the route depth has been a little long for me personally. I think they've been running routes too deep down the field, like 12 to 15 yards. If they bring it in to 10 and below, then I believe that'll give Zach Osborne more ability to complete more passes, and with completions comes confidence. So I think we could see a big game from Osborne tonight if that happens.
And let's talk about the bread and butter for this offense. That's running back Dylan Downing. Last week, 15 carries, 64 yards and a touchdown. Actually, his lowest game running since that Trinity game in Week 1. Jace, what were your thoughts on Dylan Downing last week?
I think a lot of times when he tried to go up the middle, he didn't really have any that much success, so they relied a lot on Zach White, which is something I really want to see tonight is a lot more Zach White. They brought him in the second half a lot of times in the first couple games that he's been back, but I think Dylan Downing, really once you get him a blocker in space, he can really turn something out of nothing in that middle portion. So that left side of the offensive line, guys like Isaac Olm and Justin Pickett have to be able to create those holes for him if he wants to get into open space.
And Gary, what are your thoughts on Dylan Downing in regards to last week and his success coming tonight against a MIC rival in the North Central Panthers?
Well, it wasn't a huge game for Dylan last week, and usually when Downing is quiet one week, the next week he comes back with a vengeance, and he's going to be looking for damage tonight. I would expect him to get 20-plus carries, 100-plus yards, and maybe a couple touchdowns also.
And Griffin?
Yeah, for sure. I think we will see a heavy dose of Dylan Downing tonight. I think that the Greyhounds will try to establish that run game early. Like you said, it's their bread and butter. With Osborne, like we said, not being experienced in the pocket, I think if the Greyhounds can find success down the middle and on the edge with Dylan Downing and Zach White and even maybe a little bit of J.D. Rogers, I think they can use that speed and possibly use play-action pass a little bit later in the game once they have that running game established.
And you guys mentioned the productivity from Zach White. All of his carries coming only in the second half. 5 carries, 46 yards, and a touchdown. And Jace, let's go to you. You mentioned Zach White first. Do you think that he gets more carries tonight? Only 5 last game.
I think he really does, but I think the one thing the coaches definitely had a little concern about was his ability to hold on to the ball. He's a guy that loves to continue to push his feet and continue to move the pile when there's a bunch of guys on him, which can cause a lot of fumbles at times. But I think now he's definitely matured through it. He's gotten better with it, and he's been able to really control himself. So I think you'll see a lot more carries tonight.
And we saw that fumble against Center Grove a couple weeks ago for Zach White, and he was on Hound Pound Sports Talk the other day here on WHJE, and he mentioned that after that fumble, the coaches kind of lost a little bit of trust in him. Garrett, do you think he's kind of regained that trust with the coaches coming into tonight's matchup?
I think so, because especially Zach White these past couple years, he's been the type of guy who isn't the number one back, but he gets put into the game, and then the first snap he's in, he'll get a 20-yard run. And he just carries guys with him every time he gets the ball. He's running with a vengeance, very difficult to bring down, and I think that gets trust from the coaches.
And now let's talk about J.D. Rogers. His productivity has gone down the past 2 games, only seeing a couple carries, now and there. And Griffin, do we see more out of J.D. Rogers? Do we see maybe more in the past game tonight? But either way, it seems like the majority of the carries is going to Dylan Downing and Zach White after the terrific game from J.D. in that Week 1 matchup with Trinity.
Yeah, like you said, I think that we will see a lot of Dylan Downing. We will see a good amount of Zach White, definitely more than 5 touches in the previous game. But I think J.D. Rogers is a spark for this offense. I believe if the Greyhound offense uses J.D. Rogers in a trick play or special play sort of way, I think that he can really add a spark to this offense and throw the North Central defense, especially their front 7, off guard, and I think that can only be beneficial for the Greyhound offense.
And one thing I want to see J.D. Rogers they do tonight, especially for the offense, is allow him to go to the outside. Last game, he really was going only up the middle, which is something that's really done by Dylan Downing and Zach White. But if you get J.D. Rogers to the outside and turn the receivers into blockers and force those linebackers to bounce off their assignments to get J.D., it's very hard to stop him, especially when it gets to that sideline.
And Garrett, you mentioned the play calling for offense coordinator Aaron Hahn. You mentioned him earlier. In regards to J.D. Rogers for that, do we see him more as a receiver for the rest of the season with the success coming from Dylan Downing and Zach White, you think?
Well, first off, J.D. Rogers is a heck of a punter. He's been doing a great job with that this year. Left-footed, he's pinned a lot of teams back and helped Carmel in the field position game. But I do think he can be utilized as more of a receiving back. He's quick. He's elusive. He can catch the ball. We know that. He's a great center fielder in baseball.
Arguably the fastest player on this Greyhounds backfield.
Coordination. Yeah. I would agree with that also. So I think that there are many ways to utilize J.D. Rogers.
And let's talk about this last aspect, if you may, for this Greyhounds offense. That's the receiving core led by Zach Gish. Not only a leader for this offense, but as a team now has been a vocal leader in the locker room and has certainly showed it on the field. Last game, 4 receptions, 54 yards, has been the main target for the sophomore quarterback, Zach Osborne. Jace, do we see Zach Gish continue the success tonight against a weak North Central secondary?
I think Zach Gish will only continue to get these touches if Zach Osborne continues to have that confidence in himself, which he can then translate to his receivers and his playmakers. Because like we talked about, Zach Gish, his receiving load has continued, but I think if Zach Gish continues to keep his confidence going up, he's able to hit him with those crossing routes across the middle and allow Zach Gish to get into space. He not only gains confidence, and like Garrett talked about, catches equals confidence. Those two have a great connection if Zach can get him the ball.
Griffin, thoughts?
For sure. I've loved seeing the way Zach has really matured as a player over the last 4 years. I know that he's gotten more and more reps as his years have gone on, and now he's a senior. And I know he's a very motivated player. He's a very good leader, and he's a driven player. I know he spoke at the pep rally this afternoon to try to get the student body up for this game, and I really expect him to have a big game, and I expect him to really hit his routes to help the inexperienced quarterback, Zach Osborne.
And Garrett, one name we haven't called the past couple games is the junior wide receiver Colton Parker. Coming into the season, we're talking with some O-linemen, even some defensive players. They're saying that Colton Parker might be the most athletic player on this Greyhounds team in general. Past 2 weeks, haven't seen a lot from him. Does he have a better game tonight?
Well, athletic definitely is not an understatement for Colton Parker. He's quick. His cuts, he makes people miss, quite frankly, and that's why we see him on punt returns sometimes. We see him on kick returns back there with Gish. So, will he get more catches? Maybe. But I definitely would expect him to have an impact on the game, whether it's special teams or receiving the football.
And with this Carmel offense, they have to find different ways to utilize Colton Parker. Last week, they used him on a little shovel pass play, got about a 22-yard gain. Colton Parker, they know how good he is as a wide receiver, so they have to lock him up. So if you're the Hounds offense and Coach Aaron Hahn, you have to find ways that are a little bit different, but that can still utilize Colton Parker and his speed.
Griffin?
I'd like to I think there's no way we need to sleep on Zach Dilger, the tight end who really had a big play to put the Greyhounds in a really good position at the end of regulation last week against LN. I think this offense is going to be a story of the three Zachs. Zach Osborne at quarterback, Zach Gish at wide receiver number 1, and then Zach Dilger, the tight end wide receiver kind of mix. I think that if the Greyhound offense, Aaron Hahn, uses his play calling to spread the ball across the field, I think that can help throw the North Central defense off their game and hopefully help this Greyhound offense continue and set the pace for this game.
Zach Dilger has definitely been a vertical threat for this Carmel Greyhounds offense, and we'll see how he does tonight against the North Central Panthers. We're going to take our first break of the night. You're listening to a special presentation of the Carmel Greyhounds football pregame show, sponsored by CHTV and WHJE.
Welcome back to a special presentation of your Carmel football pregame show, hosted by Charlie Maurer, Jace Dery, Garrett Drake, and Griffin Hadley, presented by WHJE and CHTV.
Welcome back here to Carmel Stadium for the special presentation of your Carmel Greyhounds football pregame show. I'm your host, Charlie Maurer, alongside me, Jace Dery, Griffin Hadley, and Garrett Drake. And guys, let's talk about this Greyhounds defense. They played terrifically since giving up 41 points week 1 against the Trinity Shamrocks in Louisville. Has played very, very well, led by Ty Wise at the outside linebacker position, Garrett Sharp at the safety position. Garrett, run me through your thoughts on this Greyhound defense so far this season.
I'll tell you what, this Greyhound defense has exceeded the expectations from everyone this year because they lost a lot of talented seniors last season, some of them playing college football. Really, when it boils down, this group has D1 talent also, and we're seeing that. And really, the defense has really helped the offense get out of some sticky situations. Well, I'll say that the offense has put them in some sticky situations, and they still haven't folded. So it's been a really good showing for this Carmel defense thus far, and I would expect the same to continue tonight.
And Ty Wise, the 3-star commit to Indiana University. Cole Brevard, nose tackle, 4-star commit to Penn State University. We're seeing some guys around the board get some D1 looks on this Greyhounds defense. Griffin, you have to be impressed with how well Ty Wise, Garrett Sharp, and the 4-star commit Cole Brevard has played this season.
100%. I cannot complain about that Carmel front 7. They have really dominated offensive lines across the state, excluding that game for Trinity in Kentucky. My focus for tonight is that Carmel secondary. I think that for the Greyhounds to win this ball game tonight, I think that the Carmel secondary is going to have to be on top of their game against that strong wide receiver core for the North Central Panthers. And missing Jake Paris, their number 1 cornerback, is definitely going to be a road bump for this game. And I think that Owen Schaefer and Tamara Springfield are going to have to be on top of their game and be lockdown corners for the Carmel defense to continue their success.
And you mentioned Tamara Springfield. Jace, 15 solo tackles for him last week. Does he continue the success tonight against one of the better receiving corps this Greyhound team might face throughout the entire season?
I don't think it's a matter of is he going to continue. I think he has to do it tonight. Going up against a guy like Richard Hamilton, who will mainly, I think it'll be Owen Schaefer guarding him, but there might be some times where Tamaris will have to guard him. I'm talking about a guy in Richard Hamilton who has last week at 160 yards receiving and a touchdown, was targeted 28 times against Center Grove. This kid's the real deal, and the secondary has to be able to lock him up.
And Garrett, the Greyhounds defense facing a pretty much all passing offense in the North Central Panthers, led by Harry Abel, the quarterback for North Central. Do they have success tonight against the pretty much dominant passing offense, you might say, in the mid-conference?
Well, one thing, Harry Abel better pray that he has time to throw the ball tonight because I tell you what, if he gets pressured, it's going to be a long night for him.
And when you're looking at the stats earlier, Harry Abel, not really the best guy, with his feet. He's more of a true pocket passer. And the last time the Hounds played a guy who really focused a lot on the pocket was Anthony Ciadell against Pike, and he had a lot of trouble, a lot of overthrown balls because guys like Ty Wise and Ty Bryant were getting to him in the backfield. So like we talked about, if Harry Abel can't make throws quickly or can't make any throws on his feet, it's going to be a long night for him. They're going to have to rely on the running game, which hasn't been as successful as they wanted to.
And let's talk about this North Central offense a little bit more, led by the quarterback, the senior Harry Abel. 52 for 115 passes, 45% from passing this year, 796 yards, averages 15 yards per pass, 9 touchdowns. And we saw early in the season, 11 interceptions already for him on the season. But you look at the past 2 games, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. The question was his decision-making early in the season, but it seems like, Griffin, that he's correct He's on a roll right now.
And, I think this more important stat is that 7-to-1 ratio in these last two games. I think Harry Abel struggled early on in this season. Yep. I think that he was a little hesitant in the pocket. I think, like Garrett said earlier about the Carmel offense, I think the routes might have been a little too far down the field for Harry Abel, but I feel like he's really found his groove in this North Central offense. Like you said, they're opposites with that Carmel offense. They're all about passing that ball. They're all about hitting those routes, and I think that for North Central to find success tonight, Harry Abel is going to have to be on top of his game, and he's really going to have to throw the ball accurately and not throw in interceptions.
And Garrett, what are your thoughts on Abel so far this season?
Well, going off the numbers game, it's really hard to judge a quarterback, especially in high school, based on their season statistics. You have to look at what they're doing recently and the opponents that they've been playing. North Central's had a rough schedule to start it out, and I believe that Abel could get back on track tonight.
And Jace, let's talk about the man for this North Central offense, Richard Hamilton. 5'11", 160-pound junior wide receiver for this Panther offense. 25 catches on the year, 411 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, averages 16 yards per catch. Obviously the best receiver on this North Central team. Can Schaefer and Tamar Springfield handle him on the edge tonight?
They have to, and like we talked about, Charlie, last week against Lawrence North and Donovan McCulley, a lot of times when you talk about deep balls, Donovan McCulley's deep ball wasn't there for him, and there were a lot of times when Tamara Springfield was guarding Omar Cooper, their best receiver, he had him beat by 2 steps. Lucky enough that McCulley didn't have his deep ball that day, but now with a whole new quarterback and a whole new receiver, he has to be able to get back in coverage and stay step to step with him.
And Garrett, how do the Greyhounds adjust to Hamilton's type of play, you might say?
I mean, it's going to be tough, but at the end of the day, they're just going to have to, study the film, which I'm sure they've done. Yeah. All the players are prepared, coaches are prepared, and they've got the game plan figured out, and, I think we're going to see them execute it well.
All right, we're going to take our last break for this pregame show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a look at the mixed standings, the overall standings in the state of Indiana, and also some final game predictions and the injury report for the Carmel Greyhounds and the North Central Panthers. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to 91.3 WHJE for a special presentation of the Carmel Greyhounds football pregame show, sponsored by CHTV and WHJE.
Hi, my name is Owen Schaefer, defensive back for your Carmel football team, and you're listening to 91.3 WHJE Carmel.
Welcome back here to Carmel Stadium for your special presentation of the Carmel Greyhounds football pregame show, sponsored by CHTV and WHJE. And guys, let's take a quick look at the mixed standings right now. After Warren Central's loss to Ben Davis last week in overtime, the Greyhounds now take the lead in the MIC at 3-0, 4-1 total on the season. And coming into this year, we thought that it was going to be Carmel's year or Warren Central's year to win the MIC. And now it looks like it's up for grabs. North Central is impressive. Ben Davis is impressive. Center Grove still hasn't gone back their star running back in Carson Steele yet, so we don't know how good they can be. It's anyone's big conference.
It really is, Charlie. And if you're looking at these standings, looking at Warren Central, North Central, and Ben Davis are all tied at 2-1 in the MIC conference, and a win tonight for North Central puts them out there tied with Carmel. Like you talk about, this is a very close race, and with 3 games left in the regular season play, it's really anyone's up for grabs. And I think with Carmel's shaky start, I think it's really gained confidence, as well as with Warren Central's shaky start. I think it's really allowed other teams to make the gain confidence, saying like, hey, we can hang with these guys.
And Griffin, the Greyhounds play Ben Davis at BD next week, and then at home for senior night against Warren Central. It's going to be a tough 2 games, a tough 3 games now, including this one. It's going to be a really, really hard time for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play out. What do you expect from the Greyhounds these last few games left in the season?
I think this Greyhound team, the momentum starts tonight.
Yeah.
I think that the battle between Carmel and North Central tonight is really going to set the tone for these next 3 weeks, especially for the Carmel Greyhounds. Ben Davis is sitting at 2-3 overall, but 2-1 in the MIC, and they've had an extremely hard schedule to start off their season. And I think that 2-3 record shows nothing about what this Ben Davis team is capable of. And I think this Carmel team is capable of many great things. However, I think this game is going to be crucial, and the Greyhound offense and defense is going to have to be on top of their game if they want to hold on to that top spot in the MIC.
Garrett, what are your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the remaining schedule for the entirety of the MIC, every single game has an impact. Like, if Carmel drops one game, it's going to shake up the whole standings and vice versa. So, really, every team has to treat the rest of the season like a must-win. Especially, every game is a must-win, obviously, but they have to have the extra sense of urgency heading into the postseason.
And, guys, I find myself keep looking up because I'm afraid a ball from a punter is going to come hit us.
I know, we're in the danger zone over here.
We are in hostile territory.
But, hey, let's talk about the special teams tonight. J.D. Rogers, the punter, Spencer Hanna, the the main kickoff specialist and also the place kicker for this Greyhounds team. How big is special teams going to be tonight for the Greyhounds? What is expected to be a close game?
I think Spencer has a crucial role in this ball game. I know we've seen that kicking in high school can win or lose a game for you.
There you go. The closest one yet so far.
The closest practice punt. Yes, I think Spencer is going to need to be on top of his game. Like I said, offense, defense, special teams. The Carmel Greyhounds are going to have to play a complete game tonight if they want to come away with the W.
And Garrett, what are your thoughts on the special teams tonight? How big of an impact is it going to come down to it in the wire?
Well, usually the special teamers don't get enough credit because they truly have a big impact on the game. And like I mentioned before, J.D. Rogers has had some stellar punts this year where, it'll hit the ground and roll for another 10-plus yards. And that's big. That's huge for a
field
team.
position is going to be a big thing.
The field position battle is a big factor in deciding who wins a football game.
And, Jace, what are your thoughts on Spencer Hanna so far? We saw him make a 50-yarder in warm-ups earlier today.
We did.
Are they going to need to call him his number for maybe a 50-yarder tonight?
I think they will be. I think really this game, I think this game is another ball almost comes in our direction. I think Spencer Hanna's going to have a really crucial role tonight. He has to hit a lot of balls in a deep range tonight because you talk about how talented he really is. A soccer player here at Carmel High School was able to translate that onto the football field last year in such a crucial way, and I think he's going to have another big role tonight against this North Central team in what I think is going to be a very close battle. And
now let's look at the 6A standings for the high school football here. Avon still stands at number 1 in 6A, 5-0. Carmel Greyhounds now stand at number 2, 4-1 in 6A, in top 5 in the state. And honestly, you look at the games for the Greyhounds that they play, they get blown out by Trinity in week 1, and now they go 4-0. All of them relatively close games. Yeah. If anything, you could say that this team is battle-tested, Garrett.
Well, Carmel's been battle-tested every year, especially starting out the season playing Trinity, which they've done the past 3 years now. And really, Carmel, a lot of these guys have been playing varsity for a while. They're used to it. They know how the system works. And when you get into games like these, that's huge because obviously Zach Osborne isn't as experienced as you would like, but he's going to be thrust into a role. But he has leaders around him who are going to corral him and help him propel the Greyhounds to a victory tonight.
And now taking a look at the all-time series between the Carmel Greyhounds and the North Central Panthers. Carmel leads 37-28. Now looking at last year, wasn't homecoming. It was actually in North Central, hostile territory for the Carmel Greyhounds. They defeated the North Central Panthers 41-40 in triple overtime. Jace, do we see that close of a game? Maybe triple overtime again tonight?
I don't know about triple overtime, Troy, but I still think this is going to be a very close game because of the stakes that these two teams have, and because of last year, North Central wants to win this game so badly for letting Carmel hang with them in their home turf for 3 overtimes, and Carmel coming off a win last week against Lawrence North has all the momentum in the world, which is why I think it's going to be such a close game tonight. And it might get a little scrappy out there, it might be a little bit of trash talk, but that's just the beauty of it.
I got to agree with Jace. I got to say, North Central is usually looked as the underdog in this matchup between Carmel and North Central. Their last win was 2005 against the Greyhounds. However, tonight I think there is no clear favorite and no clear underdog. I think this is a battle of two powers in the Mid-Conference, and I think it should be a very close game, a very exciting game, and I think whichever team wins is going to have to not beat themselves and be on top of their game.
And now let's take a look at the injury report. Now, it came into the game looking like Jay Paris was not going to play. We're seeing him warming up on the field wearing that number 3, so it's going to be interesting to see how much playing time he gets tonight. Either way, you have to believe that Coach Hebert is going to be satisfied with Tamar Springfield stepping into his position either way. We're going to see how much time Jake Paris gets tonight, but still, he will be probably on a snap count tonight. Brandon Mature, the starting right guard for the Carmel Greyhounds, will be out with an apparent lower body injury. It sounds like he will be back for next week, though, so it's good to have their starting right guard back next week for Ben Davis. And then again, Gabe Quigley missed the past 2 weeks, is now coming back, and it sounds like Zach Osborne will get the start tonight over him. So it's going to be interesting to see how the sophomore quarterback does again tonight against one of the biggest matchups that Carmel will face all year in the North Central Panthers. Now, to wrap up our show, let's go down the line. Final predictions, final scores. What are we thinking? Garrett, let's start with you.
I know we're talking about how this might be a close game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carmel wins by at least 2 possessions. I'm going 24-14 Carmel victory. We're going to see a long field goal, 3 touchdowns, nice and simple, and then it's going to be a Hounds dub on senior night. Not on senior night, on homecoming. I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that both offenses are going to be battling early, but I think the defenses will shine. I think However, scoring will come into play the second half, and I have the Greyhounds winning by 7 points, 28-21. I think the kicking game will be important, but only for extra points. I think that the inexperience of Osborne is going to show, but I think he needs to be on top of his game, and I think the Greyhounds can pull this out if they establish that running game and turn to Dylan Downing in times where they need some fuel on offense.
And Jace?
This might sound a little crazy, but I think these defenses are going to have an absolute battle tonight. I'm going to say 14-7 Hounds. I think this is going to be a dandy of a game because of this environment. I think more teams are going to really focus a lot of their attention on the defense. I think it's going to be a little bit of a sloppy play to start. I'm going to go, 14-7 Greyhounds and a dandy of a game.
I'm going to agree. Low-scoring game, windy tonight. Field goals might not make a huge factor tonight for both teams. I expect Dylan Downing and Zach White to both have a rushing touchdown tonight as well. 17-14 will be my final score as well. That'll do for us here down on this sideline. I'd like to thank Griffin Hadley and Garrett Drake for joining us here for a special presentation of the Carmel Greyhounds football pregame show presented by WHJE and CHTV. We are now going to send it back up to the press box where David Wiederhaft and Luke Donovan are ready for their regular scheduled pregame show. Up to you, David.